Welcome to Jon Ferrian Live. We're here on a Thursday night this week, everybody. Come on in. We're going to have a good time talking about the Iron Dog race up in Alaska this year. The race is coming up this winter again, and we've got the executive race director, John Woodbury, on. And we got two of the top racers in the circuit. We got Tyler and Chris coming on from teams 7 and 10. So come on in. Go ahead in the comments. Drop in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to see if, there's going to be a lot of people here tonight from Alaska, I'm sure. So we've got my first and favorite guest always on is Tia Smith from Santa Barbara, California. My number one fan who never even rode a snowmobile yet, but we're going to fix that this winter. We're going to try to get her hooked up with somebody and get her on a snowmobile this winter. But we got James Kaufman coming in. Patrick Fines is coming in. David Wagner from California is watching in. Scott Campbell from Pennsylvania, a couple of Iron Dog racers in the house. We even have some East Coasters from Massachusetts watching tonight. Brian Thibault, one of our big fans, and Ian McNichol. James, come on in, everybody. So as you guys are watching and getting ready here, drop it in the comments. Don't forget to share the show out because guess what? Just like always, the Live Large, Share and Win contest. Share it out. We've got Woody's Snowcross Racing Team sponsoring the show tonight with a t-shirt and Idaho and Potatoes, one of their awesome sponsors. They're going to be share the show out, follow them on Facebook and Instagram, and you'll get in to win just for watching and sharing the show tonight. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. The other thing I want to talk to you guys about is this awesome new logo. This logo is live on my website right now. You can order this new shirt with the American flag symbol on it. It's kind of a rustic American flag. And, of course, on the bottom it says Live Large, and you guys all know what that means. Live Large is all about living life to the fullest, make the most of every day, and make a difference to others. And that's what we're here to do tonight. We're going to be talking, normally we talk safety, education, positive growth of the sport. Tonight is all about that positive growth of the sport, and we're talking sled racing. So let me go ahead and drop down the images here in 3, 2, and 1. And we got our Iron Dog race team here. If you guys haven't already, make sure you come off of mute, and let's get this party started.
Hello, glad to be here, John. Appreciate you having us.
Awesome. So just for everybody's edification here, we've got Mr. John Woodbury straight above me. I love doing this part. When I got 4 guests, I get to point, right? So John Woodbury's above me. And then I'm going to butcher everybody's last name, so I'm going to use just first names. You guys, as you introduce yourself, use your last name and let us know who it is. But we got beside John up on top is Tyler. So Tyler, give us a quick hi and let us know your full name.
Hey guys, I'm Tyler Ackelstead, Iron Dog Team 7, reigning champion from last year with Nick Olstad. And
nice.
Thanks for having me on here, and look forward to hearing some questions and talking to you guys.
That sounds great. And so, Chris, you're next, right down here on next to me on the side, actually on this side over here. So go ahead and do a quick introduction, Chris, and we'll come back to John.
Yeah, I'm Chris Olds. My teammate, we're Team 10 with my teammates Mike Morgan. We were the 2018 and 19 champions. I've done the race 20 times. So
20 times. Oh my gosh, we're going to get into that tonight a little bit. I bet you've got a couple of amazing stories to cover with everybody. But before we get going here too much, guys, tonight I'm just going to share some real high-level goals as we're here to talk about the race, let you guys get to know a little bit about it. John is the executive director of the race, and he's going to walk us through some of the history of the race and some of the nuances of it and some big changes we got going on. And then we're going to come back to these two racers over here and let you guys know. But tonight is a night probably, I don't want to say different than other nights, but one thing I want to highly encourage you guys tonight is to ask good questions about the race. That's what we're here for tonight, is to really kind of make sure that the folks in the lower 48, as they say up in Alaska, here in the U.S., we just call it the U.S. when we're down here, but we don't always think of it as the lower 48. But when you're up in Alaska, that's a phrase I hear very commonly, is the lower 48. And so for all of us down here who maybe have heard of the race but haven't really gotten the full grand finale explanation of how it goes and what it's about, tonight's your night. And so make sure you ask some good questions tonight as we go. Give it a few minutes as we get into it, and if I see a question pop up that's relevant to our conversation, I'll bring it up and I'll interrupt. And so, for John, Tyler, and Chris, you guys kind of watch me, and my cue will be if you're in the middle of talking and there's a question that's pertinent to what we're talking about, watch me. I'll kind of put my finger or my hand in the air here, and that'll be kind of your cue to take a breath, and we'll interject a question. So John, why don't you just give us a little background on kind of the history of the race, and then let's go into your involvement in the race. Right away I'm wondering, and I'm sure everybody else is, are you involved as long as the race is old? Is this kind of what you started, or did you take over from somebody else in the past? So give us all the rundown. Back to you.
Oh, no. Well, the race is the brainchild of some pretty hardcore group of Alaska racers, just a group of guys and gals who really wanted to challenge their machines, wanted to challenge themselves. They kind of tried to do a false start on it in 1983, but in 1984, they kind of gelled and they hopped on these springers and foam seat suspension sleds and they rallied up to Nome and various places, but the first route was to Nome. It was called the Gold Rush Classic early on.
Okay.
And so in '84 it started, and my involvement with the race, I kind of cut my teeth as a journalist, and so I was a photographer and a writer for a while, and I covered that first race. And I haven't covered every single race, but I've been involved in some sort of coverage, whether it was in the field or back at the at the plant writing the stories. So I've been a above average observer. I've done the trail class, expedition class, we call it this year, 2.5 times. And it's an amazing experience. It's probably the best way to get into the Iron Dog because these guys are a different breed of animal here. Way too fast for me. Way too dangerous. I like a good adventure, but boy, 100 miles an hour on the Yukon or across the sea ice or across open water, that's a pretty brisk cup of tea. But so the expedition class is a great way for folks to get into it. And then I covered the race again for Iron Dog, and I used to own Alaska Snowrider magazine. And I tell you, the trail looks just fine, from the right seat of an airplane about 500 feet up. It's very smooth. These guys complain a lot. I'm drinking that cup of tea, but it's really unique to the world race. I mean, it's the world's longest, toughest race, and it really does take a special, very capable athlete, a very reasoned mechanic, and a whole lot of support. I mean, these guys have amazing support crews. Iron Dog has amazing support crews, and our sponsors like Donlin and NAC and SBS, these huge long-term sponsors. And folks like you who help us to get the word out, So we're ready to go. We need a few more. We want a few more races. We're ready to go as it is. But we sure would like to see some folks sign up. But
that's
anyhow,
awesome.
Here's my elevator speech right there.
Yeah, no, that's perfect, and I think it's great. Kind of a segue here. I'll kind of follow up with a couple of things. Is some of the things were our goals for tonight is just to kind of educate people about the race, let them ask some questions. But really, we would love to encourage people to sign up for the race, right? And there's so many. Like I personally know a few folks who are here watching the show tonight that have actually been on the show that we've talked about. But we got David Wagner, Scott Campbell is on, and I've heard from them through their point of view of what it goes on. I'll say in a normal time, right? But when you get to the point where the Canadian border is closed, right? Like how the hell do I get to Alaska when the Canadian border's closed, right? Like that's one thing that's on my mind. Do you fly? And if I'm going to bring a sled up, so there's all these logistical things that we should address tonight, so that we can kind of remove roadblocks and barriers and mental or physical or whatever they are to help people understand what the way to get into this is. And we actually already have a couple of questions starting to populate in too. We'll come back to, but why don't we address some of those things I just brought up now and talk about how if I'm down here in Washington State, for example. What do you recommend I do to start considering getting ready for the race?
Well, so we have a team from Canada coming up here, and if I know those guys, they're unstoppable.
Yep.
They're just a couple great. They have a great entourage. They're funnier than heck. If I know those guys, they're probably going to unload on one side of the border and keep the cause show up in Big Lake on race.
We won't tell anybody that, though, right?
Yeah, no. I'm working on their alibi right now.
Exactly.
But there are the situation changes with the Canadian border. They've just extended the closure, but I've had a friend just show up, about 2 weeks ago, and she drove up the border and down, out and in, no problem.
Yeah.
There are procedures that you can use, such as legitimate routes. I can hire you for a day and I'll pay you $1 if you have a job up here, or a letter of kind of authenticity that you actually belong and you're making a purposeful 3-day drive, you
Yep.
can do it. I mean, the border is porous. It's not locked
Yeah,
down by any stretch, you know.
And I've heard that for folks who are going to Alaska, and I asked the question just because I know it's on people's minds, but I'm aware that there are some solutions for this as well too, and so I appreciate you bringing that up. Is there's folks who want to go to Alaska that to drive up you have to go through Canada, and if that's your story, your message at the thing, and you've got documentation, paperwork, and a story that matches up, what you don't want to have happen is show up in Revelstoke snowmobiling for 4 days in between, because they'll bust you and they'll find you and they'll ship you back, right? So don't pull one of those. It's a pretty serious deal. But if you are en route where you say you're going to be, then you should be just fine. So,
and you can avoid the whole Canadian border thing if you are very careful with your planning. You can hop on the ferry, and you can pop back all the way to to South Central or even Whittier. You can make it to Whittier. But they're running at a smaller capacity. But that's one way to avoid the whole border crossing thing. So.
yeah. Yep. Awesome. So let me we'll sprinkle in a few questions here as we go, and there maybe aren't in necessarily any predictable order or anything, but Trish Ryan's asking, when do you start preparing for the next race? Meaning, and kind of, she's asking a follow-up question, but I'm assuming it's kind of a, in jest. Is it immediately after you start, cross the finish line the first time? Is it starting to prep for the following year, or what is your routine? Maybe we'll go over. I'll just pick somebody here. Chris, you're beside me. Why don't you address that question? Like, when do you start prepping for the race? Do you do it weeks in advance, months in advance, a year in advance? Like, what's the strategy?
Well, I think at the end of the day, it's, a year in advance. I mean, if the race is over and you're thinking about next year, if you're going to do it or you're not, you don't have to do it that. I mean, my first year I raced, I didn't think about it until November 1st. So,
yep.
As far as getting ready for it, you don't necessarily need that much time, but, and Tyler can probably speak up, but we're already, just kind of really starting to think about what it's going to take this time of year to get our sleds ready to, working out and being physically ready for it. That stuff's kind of a, an all year thing, but, I've thrown the race together in 12 days before too, and did it in 12 days. So I've been on both extremes of having a full year to be ready and in 12 days to prep for it. So, it can be done either way. Obviously, I would prefer to be more in shape and more ready than not, but that's not to say that it can't happen.
Awesome. I agree with Chris on that. Mentally, as far as a racer, it's probably, once you've done it once, it kind of becomes a lifestyle.
Okay.
I would say to some degree, it kind of gets embedded into you where you're thinking about it all the time, and it's a constant. You're constantly thinking about what to do and this and that throughout the year. Since the end of the race, you want to find a way to fix what you did wrong that year, right?
Yep,
it's
exactly.
Oh man, I should have done this. I can't believe we did that. I can't believe we lost that. I lost 5 minutes. I should have done this. There's always a shoulda, coulda, wouldas that go along with it as a veteran. But I don't think there's anything that's holding anybody back from getting into the race now. There's time to get your sled and get out there and get up here and really get to see Alaska. That's what I invite anybody that wants to ever see or do this race, is just the amount of Alaska and the villages and the places you get to see you'll never see in any other way.
It's amazing.
So,
yeah. And that's actually what got me into it, was just the adventure. I mean, I wasn't thinking of it as a race. I thought of it as an adventure, and that really kind of started sucking me into wanting to do it.
Yeah. And is that kind of the recommendation? Like, if somebody's going to do this for the first time, it probably is pretty set up that they're, and forgive me if I misstate the classes, but you have a pro class, and what's the other class? Is Expedition? Did I hear that right?
That's right.
Okay. So the Expedition class is one that someone can come in and, for my benefit and everybody else's, like, explain the Expedition class. Is it competitive, not competitive? Is there still money on the table? Is it all just kind of trophies? Like, how would you describe the key differences between the pro and the Expedition class? John, why don't you go on that one?
Sure. I would say the difference is probably about 50 miles an hour.
Okay.
But no, it's quite different. So on the pros, I mean, these guys, these guys are really in an elite class. So when they're saying they just show up 12 days before the race, I mean, really, Chris has 20 years, so it's 20 years plus 12 days. So,
Yeah.
I would advise everybody who hasn't been exposed to extreme high speed on a snow machine to really enter the expedition class.
Yeah.
It's half the mileage, roughly. You can stop and stay all day if it's beautiful and just take pictures or watch the aurora,
Awesome.
Whereas these guys, you blink and they're in and out of a checkpoint. The beautiful thing about the expedition class that I really, really enjoyed was, the sense of adventure, but I made friends. Up and down that. There's 1,000 miles of friendship up that trail in the expedition class because you can
Awesome.
linger, you can learn about the host families. It really is amazing. And you can kind of run what you brung. I mean, your machine has to be mechanically sound, but it can, people have done it on a Scandic, You're better off with a, high quality suspension machine. Not that the Scandic isn't high quality, but, a performance machine. But it's a slower pace. It's more palatable to your intermediate advanced rider. And we welcome just about anybody. There are some prerequisites, but you kind of got to, the trail's going to prove up your riding ability before any other thing happens.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Sounds good. Well, I'm going to take another question from the audience here. J.R. Hoope, which I believe is from Minnesota, if I remember right. So J.R. is here, and he's asking, how the heck do you know where you're going? So, Tyler, why don't you go ahead and take that one? I'm assuming it's GPS coordinates, and you guys have a checkpoint. You maybe have pre-ridden the route. But honestly, this is such a long route and a long mileage in between checkpoints. It's a legitimate question. How the heck do you know where you're going?
It's a great question. 100% GPS.
Okay.
In most cases, it's a pretty common path. When we get on the Yukon, a lot of the trail we're riding is traveled by villagers. That's their mode of transportation from Galena to Caltag to Nolato. They're moving in between those directly down the Yukon, going basketball tournaments, going village to village. It's a pretty single path route, and as far as that, it's hard to get too off from it once you're out of the village. There's some confusion. Usually what gets a lot of the rookies is coming in and leaving.
Yeah.
Obviously the roads and congestion there. But as far as once you're right outside the village and then you're going to the next, your next checkpoint, at that point you're not going to veer off too far off from it. Last year was a pretty wild exception.
Yeah.
I don't think that I have ever rode in anything like that in my life. I stared at a white sheet of paper for 2.5 days.
Wow.
And Chris will, to that. Yeah, I've never been in anything like it in my life. And it legitly I spent more time for at least 600 miles staring at a GPS, and I just got used to not even looking at, look up, stare at the GPS, look up, look,
That's
you're
crazy.
so zoomed in.
It's pretty dangerous.
It was rather interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd hit stuff. I almost knocked myself out once last year with my handlebars with my hand. All of a sudden, I'm going along the sea ice, and next thing I know, it's whack, and I hit so hard, I think I ripped my glove. It hit my face so hard, and
wow.
I didn't even know what I hit.
Yeah.
I just,
I know the answer to this same question from Chris, right? Chris, I'm Chris, and the answer to this question is just follow me because I'm in the lead, right?
I'll tell you what, there's definitely some advantages of being in the back. Being a follower instead of the leader.
Chris is like, how do you know where you're going? Like, just follow me. I got this, right? Anyway, Chris, go ahead and answer the question now that I'm done being a smart aleck.
Yeah. No, I mean it's definitely you kind of get used to doing the trail. Like if you like Tyler and myself, we've done it enough that there is a lot of sections you get kind of familiar with. You take a wrong trail one year, you remember that trail to not hit that one again. But we obviously do rely on GPS quite a bit. My teammate, he's actually more of a trail. I've always been kind of a GPS navigator, but Mike, my teammate, he's a trail guy. He rarely looks at his GPS. I'm the one that has to tell him he's going down the wrong trail, but he rarely uses it. He's just, following the trail either from memory or just, picking the right paths and looking for which path he thinks is correct. And as Tyler mentioned, probably the biggest confusion for people just starting out is the in and out of villages. And I'll say that all the time, and especially to the rookies, that really goofed me up the first time trying to figure out, the best thing to do is to ask people when you get into a village, how do you get out of here? Because, we had one of those where we left, we came into McGrath one year on the road, and we got we got to the thing. We said, we got to the checkpoint. How do you get out of here? And they said, oh, just go down to the river and follow the cones. Well, what we didn't know, the cones were the ones coming in, not the ones going out. So we headed back. Yeah. So we were heading back to Big Lake, 20 miles back to Big Lake until we figured out that we were definitely not going the right way.
Bummer.
So, yeah, but GPS is definitely.
GPS technology has gotten so much better. Like we're running 5-inch display, color displayed screens now that have a breadcrumb trail. Most cases you can get that from somebody, going into the race, that it's going to keep you on the track. You just got to learn to trust your navigation tools that you have in front of you.
And all the sleds are outfitted with GPS trackers too. So for the folks back home, when the race is going on, you can kind of be a keyboard rider too, and they're really accurate. They ping every minute and a half, 2 minutes, and so you get some pretty real-time tracking for these racers.
Nice.
And you can tell when they go 20 miles out of the way. You can see that.
Before I forget to ask, John, remind us all the dates of this year's race.
Sure. The pro class leaves February 13th, and they leave Big Lake. They go to Nome. We do an overnighter and a halfway banquet there. And then we go to Kotzebue, and then we come back to Big Lake and finish February 20th. Now, the expedition class leaves Big Lake on February 11th, and they end up, depending on how fast they go, 15th or 16th in Nome. And that's their finish banquet, the halfway banquet, finish banquet in Nome.
Yeah. And so with the route changes, so maybe this is a good time, actually. I know, John, you provided me with a map for everybody. If you're cool with it, what I'll do is I'll pop that map up, and you have a copy of the map in front of you there so you can reference it also? You got it stuck in your head here. Okay. So I'm just so everybody knows, I'm going to actually cover everybody up here, so you're not going to be able to see us anymore. But literally right now, everybody in the audience who's watching can see the Iron Dog race map for this season. And just talk us through it, John. You're familiar with the image, and just talk us through what this route looks like and how it differs from maybe previous years.
Well, first off, we have a pretty energized board, and I think that one of their goals is to keep the race relevant, keep it, invigorated and exciting. So they've changed up the route a few times in the last 2 years. Specifically, we've added the Kotzebue Loop, 375, 400 miles. Last year we started in Fairbanks and finished in Big Lake. But this route this year starts in Big Lake, which is just north of Anchorage, Alaska's largest city. It goes through a bevy of villages and cities, and some of them are just cabins. Poor Man is a abandoned cabin in the winter, and Ophir's an abandoned cabin all the time. So our first real stop for these racers is about 350 miles in a town called McGrath. Really full of friendly people, but a really good place to take a break. These guys are going to be exhausted when they get there. And then the next stretch of the trail is probably one of the most difficult. It was just a devil last year because we had like 10 feet of snow, and it was amazing. So we go to McGrath to Poor Man, which we have our SBS, or Spinard Builder Supply sponsor guys. They hang out there, and that's probably the best cabin to see on the trail because it just appears out of nowhere, and you've already been going for 130 miles, And then we hop down onto Ruby and the Yukon River, and this is where things kind of wind out of a twisted forested trail onto a high-speed river. And these guys reach 90, 100 miles an hour. They're making quick leaps from Ruby to Galena in 45 minutes, and that's like 60 plus miles. And then we do the Caltag portage, and that pulls us off the Yukon River onto the coast, and that's a area with its own perils and high speed, stretches. And then when we hit to Nome, we turn around and do the Kotzebue Loop. And when these guys were talking, to put it in perspective, when they were talking, they were just looking at their GPS. Last year, there was like a 3-day ground blizzard. And if you've ever been in the ground blizzard, there's, 60-mile-an-hour winds. There's visibility to zero. You can probably see the glove in front of your jaw, and that's about it. But and then we turn back around and we return to Big Lake through that Poor Man Crossing and through the Shell Lake and the Squintina and the Rainy Pass area. And I think that these guys would agree that that part of the trail going up and back from the Yukon to Big Lake is the toughest stretch of trail that the Iron Dog crosses. It's just unforgiving.
When you think of Alaska, right, people think of big mountains, lots of snow, trees, right, rivers. You think of all this stuff. That's what you have from Big Lake to Ruby, especially in McGrath. That's a tough going section where we basically, so in that you cut through the Alaska Range, which that is, right, that's McKinley, Denali. You were cutting all the way through. We're going in from the south side and coming out on the north side into the Kuskokwim Delta and coming and running that all the way through the interior to the Yukon. Once you start getting to the Yukon and the coast, that's when it's maybe not what, it's, you get to the coast and all those trees and what you kind of think of the big mountains and stuff of Alaska, and you get some stuff that gives you depth perception and some stuff you can actually look at and see. You got tall mountains that kind of you can use as a navigating tool. For us, that kind of goes away because you get out on the coast, and that's where these ground storms that we talk about.
Yeah.
There's no definition out there. It's just white. You're out on a big sheet of ice. You can be, 15 miles off the coast and 30 miles across out on a sheet of ice, and all it is white. Yeah. So now a blow comes in, it's snowing, everything is white. You can't tell up, down, sideways, anything. That's the tough aspect of that. But then you can be out there on days too, and it's crystal clear blue and beautiful, and there's a sunrise coming up, and there's nothing prettier than it. I mean, it's awesome, and Chris is, it's pretty awesome to see this end of it too. Yeah. So it's not.
So I did drop the map back down again. Everybody can see us again, just so you guys are clear. So if you were scratching your nose or anything, it's time to stop now. So just so we're clear.
Something.
Go ahead.
Say real quick. So this is just for guys out there that are following and listening to something that's always stuck with me, and I don't know, Chris, if I had it kind of told to me early on, and it's kind of the pace of the race when you start talking about the pro class, and this is kind of how I think of it, and a lot of the pro class riders, we average 60 miles an hour over the race. So a minute is a mile.
Yep.
So everything is very fast paced. You're in a checkpoint. If you're saving a minute, you saved a minute on the trail or a mile on the trail. If you're working on your sled for 10 minutes, you just gave up 10 minutes to somebody else or 10 miles on the trail. Everything is, you're worried about every single minute. You're constantly trying to save everything you can. There's, we're never taking a lot of time. We come into a checkpoint and we're not drinking water, grabbing food or anything. It's pretty much get gas, oil, go.
Yep.
Be in and out. You want to keep a check. You're feeling, so if we're putting 10 gallons in each sled, 20 gallons in, and maybe a couple quarts of oil, most checkpoint stops are 4 minutes.
Yep, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's like
on the flip side of that, he's that 12 that year that I'd had 12 days to prepare. I raced with the guy Matt Spurnack, and we were happy to stop at Foreman and eat some soup there on the clock.
Yeah.
Sounds like there's a backstory there. Do we want to tell it, or do you want to?
Oh no, it's just the best. I mean, we were just tired. We were beat and tired,
Gotcha.
and we just. It was great to stop, and there was a cabin in the middle of nowhere that had some great stew on, and
awesome.
We stopped, and it was like I've never stopped for food on the race, but this was worth every minute of it.
That's awesome.
Why don't you and Mike stop there next year and have some soup, dude?
We might.
Tyler will. I'm sure he'll wait for you. Look, you're getting soup. I'm sure he'll wait
right.
with his thumb to the bars. I'm sure he'll be waiting. So. All right, so let me go back to the comments here. I just got a couple of shout outs. We've got Mark Nelson saying, guys, Team 40 coming up from Utah. So we got I'm assuming a new racer. So Mark's watching. We got Scott Campbell doing a shout out for 93. And of course, Dave Wagner's watching here with his Team 11. Let me see what else we got for questions here. So Scott Campbell says, ask Tyler how the snow conditions were in the upper loop last year. Great story. So I don't know if you've already kind of covered that. Some of these comments I've kind of been holding, and so they might have been a few minutes before you covered it. If you've already covered it, that's fine. Let me know.
I mean, last year's upper loop, so the Kotzebue Loop, I'll be honest, I loved that loop, but I'm glad it's back. This is going into my 17th year of racing, and that's the first time in those 17 years that I got to train something new and go see something new. In the villages that we got to see in that route, Buckland, Kotzebue, Norvik, Kayana, Selawik, were awesome. And they are truly a racing community in that northern region, and they love snowmobile, snow machine racing. They truly are a racing community. It's awesome, and it was a pleasure to go up there, and I'm ecstatic that we get to go back. I loved it and every minute of it. It was definitely challenging. It throws in more coastal riding, right? That's where we were talking about our whiteout conditions, and there's some definitely, it's tough, but I believe, the more we race it, and last year was awful for as far as the whiteout.
Yeah.
When I went on a training ride, though, me and Nick went through there, and it was clear blue, and just talk about it. Me and Nick, we've talked about several times. I want to go back up there in April, March, April, and ride through there when we got some daylight and go spend some time up there, some spring riding. It's a cool area. Very cool. Very neat.
Very cool. So the next question I've got here is from Daniel Thomas, who says he's another Iron Dog racer, first-time Iron Dog racer from Utah, and he says, I'll be coming in to Alaska several weeks prior to the race. What do you recommend for practice, and how is fuel handled when out practicing in the remote parts of Alaska?
Yeah, I can kind of
go ahead,
talk
Chris.
to that.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Definitely, since we're starting at Big Lake, he definitely wants to get familiar with where the trail's going to be leaving towards Squitna and up towards Puntilla. There's plenty of fuel on the river. Squitna has a couple different places you can get fuel. Puntilla actually has fuel there. Something you might want to check before you go, because sometimes there could be light on fuel, but he can definitely get with us. I'll be doing the rookie workshop, I'm sure, John.
Yeah. December 5th.
And we'll can kind of go over some of those details about training, but I would definitely try to get that, first part of the trail. And it's the roughest part, so it's great training.
Okay. Sounds good. Another question coming in from Scott Campbell from Pennsylvania says, what is Tyler and Chris's favorite village or villages? Do you have a favorite?
Good question.
Oh man, that's a tough one.
I
can tell you right now that, and Tyler I guarantee you will back me up, that in my opinion, is probably the coolest part of the whole race is all the villages are very supportive of this race, and they'll give up their beds for us, feed us. They treat us like we're basically kings when we show up, and it is just an awesome. Like I said, it's actually my favorite part of it. Just being at any of the villages and just the support and love that we get is awesome.
There's nothing like it. It's you go into somebody's house and they've shipped their kids off to go sleep on a floor somewhere else, so that they
Wow.
know that we have a peaceful. We might have an 8-hour layover, and they have a hot meal waiting for us, cold drinks, food. It's in a bed. They go above and beyond. It's all the way up that trail, as you go, as we said, the McGrath, Galena, Caltag, Unacleat, Kotzebue, all the, and into Nome. I can't speak highly enough of all those villages along the route.
Yeah.
I've never been treated with anything but the utmost respect and some great people.
So what I'm hearing,
him to pick the cutest puppy.
I know. It's
exactly.
like what I'm hearing is your favorite one is all of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really is. It is. They treat
awesome.
us so well. It is a lot of, I think, people think, Iditarod, and it is. It's a huge race in Alaska, but I think when we come in there, they treat us like Chris said. They treat us so well, like you're a king out there. It's amazing, and it's humbling, actually.
So John, have you ever lost a racer in the race thinking that they were lost or like just remote, and decided to just marry a villager and just never come out of hiding?
No, don't get any ideas. We have a hard time keeping them on the stage. We have had some glitches, though. I think 2 years ago on the tracker, I forget who it was, Ivar Carlson, who's racing this year with Brad Mountain. all of a sudden he ended up in Antarctica. His tracker showed him in Antarctica, and we're like, what the heck? It was some GPS glitch or some meridian line.
That had to be a freaky moment.
Yeah,
Somebody hit the Bermuda Triangle, the Alaska Triangle.
That's it.
I've seen that movie. It's no fun. Don't go there. So awesome. So Kevin Carell from California is asking, for the pro class, is external fuel tanks a must or requirement, or is there enough fuel checkpoints, or are you required to carry fuel on this race?
I can kind of speak a little bit to that, if you don't mind, Tyler.
Go ahead.
I think it's a must. I mean, you could probably get away without doing it, but as a pro class racer, as a person on my first race, I ran out of fuel, and I had to walk.
That's no good.
Determined that I would never run out of fuel again. So, I prefer to have a little more fuel, and my teammate likes to cut it close and kind of likes to
Yes, he does.
he likes to thread that the needle and try to.
Your teammate's like, why should I carry fuel? Chris is carrying fuel. I'll just use his fuel.
He has that attitude sometimes. So
don't you love people like that? Even when I'm riding in the backcountry down here in the mountains, it's like, yeah, no, my safety equipment is for me. My extra food, my thing. Like, I didn't bring this with to feed you because your lack of planning. Come on, what's going on? Awesome.
I laughed last year. He didn't put. Didn't you ask him about leaving Galena going to Caltag, and he thought he only filled one tank?
Yeah,
and he was like, "Oh, I only filled one." Yeah,
he told me that just to mess with me. Yeah, just so I'd be freaking out the whole time.
That's awesome. The mileage leap is, I think, one of our longest stretches is 99 miles. We have a 97 and a 98. So, that is when all things are optimal. There's no track spin. There's no wrong turns. So your sled has to go at least 99 miles an hour 99 miles at 90 miles an hour. Yep. So that's your range. That's your longest leap in this course. Sometimes when we go to Fairbanks, there's a longer leap there, but for this course, it's 99 miles.
Yeah. A little plug to a spot like trail tanks, though. I mean, that's honestly, for expedition wise, for ease, a lot of guys see these elaborate metal tanks, these aluminum tanks that we run. They're nice, and that kind of goes into the whole, because they're plumbed into our system, so you're not wasting any time ever trying to dump anything.
Got it.
But a trail tank they pretty much make them for all the brands now, get you up to that 12-gallon capacity. If you're out there running at a good, reasonable pace, that's going to get you every single run, and that's a bolt-on product that is easy to get on and get you out there. So that's,
it's a good call.
There's options, yeah. There's ways to do it,
Cool.
There is.
All right, go ahead, Chris. Yep.
Oh.
Chris, you're cutting in and out a little bit. We didn't hear what you said, so if you want to repeat it, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna. I don't remember what I was saying.
Perfect, because we didn't hear it anyway, so it all worked out just perfectly. All right, so and I'm just busting your chops, right? So Emmett Melton says, which section of the race would you say is the most grueling? And you kind of referenced that earlier, so if you just want to touch on it real quick again, we can probably get going into the next questions.
So lightning round between those two.
Yeah, for me, it's the Big Lake to McGrath. I think is the toughest part of the trail. The only section of trail that I personally don't like is from Puntilla to Roan. For whatever reason, I do not like that part of the trail. That's just me. It's not that it's tough, but it can, if the river's blown out and there's ice, there's holes in the ice that kind of, they can kind of catch you off guard, and there's a lot of rocks and stuff that you can hit. That's just me personally.
I agree with that. That's Rainy Pass Lodge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I would agree with Chris. You're riding on eggshells through there because it's one of those areas that there's flow, but there's a lot of rocks through this pass.
Okay.
So it looks like everything, it kind of blows in. It looks all good, but it's really kind of fluffy snow. And if you start busting through it and you're in a lot of side hills, so say you're loading one side a little bit, inevitably it's like all of a sudden, ting, you hit something. And if you're loaded too hard on that side, it's an easy spot to rip off the front end. And it's a very, it's a bad spot because basically it's go back 20 miles to really not to a terrible spot that you're going to have a bunch ahead of you, or you've got 200 miles ahead of you to get to really where you're going to start getting parts. So you're definitely, I'll agree with Chris 100% on that. I did really dislike that area.
That's a good heads up for anybody who's new to the race. That's actually a great call out. So
We get to do it twice this year.
Oh, lucky you. You guys need to hire a new trail route planner. John, maybe you're fired for that one. So.
Oh no, that's the board. It's their wheelhouse.
Awesome. So we had a question here also. What and maybe it's obvious to people, but I don't know that I've heard you talk about it yet. Is for the pro class specifically? Is there an engine size limit or requirement that you need? Is it just talk to us that? Is it 600 class, 800 class,
600 cc, yeah.
600? Okay.
600, and then the expedition class, it's kind of whatever you have. 4-stroke, 800s,
Okay, sounds good. And then the next question is, and I love this question. This one's going to be good. You guys, sit down for a minute. You ready for this one? All right. So who is John's, Tyler's, and Chris's favorite picks for this year's race? That's a loaded question right there. Like if you guys each had $1 in your hand, which team are you betting on this year?
I'm betting on John. Come on up, man.
Me? I'm not even racing this year.
Oh, never say never.
Oh man.
For you.
I'll ride the antique class. Maybe I'll ride a Skidoo Elon or something like that. Maybe that'll be my sled.
I think you've got your collective top tier teams that have been there for a while, Chris and Mike and myself, and there was Todd, Minnick, and Tyson. But things have really been changing. I'll be honest, there's some up and coming Zach Weiss and Brett Lapham. I think they've got third last year. They're doing really well. They've kind of stepped up. They're getting to become veterans. Casey Boylan and Brian Leslie have been doing awesome. There's this whole group of younger generation that is kind of starting to step in, and they're kind of right on the heels, and they're putting down great times, and it's keeping it competitive and keeping people honest. And I mean, they could really, any one of them could break into there and win the thing.
And all it takes is a mechanical failure, right? Like, I mean, somebody can be in front one minute, and the next minute they've taken out an A-arm or a track is blown out or something, right? And it's anybody's race always. So what were you going to say, Chris? Yep.
Yeah, we've been in that position where, it's anybody's race, really. I mean, there's so many variables and so much that can go wrong that, I mean, really, even the guys that you might not even consider contenders are contenders because all they got to do is keep their stuff together. We've been Tyler and I have both been in the same position where, heck, we thought we had the race won and it didn't work out that way. I'll never forget crossing the finish line, I think in 2019, when they said, well, when did you guys figure out that you won the race? And we said, when we crossed the finish line. There's too many variables that can happen.
Yeah. So if my ultimate question is what's the strategy? Is it the tortoise or the hare? Like let's break it out by pro class versus like expedition class. Like let's talk expedition first. If you're in expedition class, tortoise or the hare, who's going to win or do better in that scenario?
I'll field the expedition question because I'm not qualified for the pro question, but no, it doesn't matter how fast you go. You just got to finish a gnome in one piece. So exactly. I would say it might be, it's like a couch dog. You just kick back and relax. No tortoise, no hare. Just run just have your own ride. Well, these guys can answer the pro.
Yeah, I'd call that the tortoise strategy then, where it's kind of slow and steady and enjoy the ride, right? Like,
I mean, some of those expeditions, they're former pro class racers. I mean, there's some racers that may lack the experience or the exposure that go on the expedition class that have every bit the caliber of skills to race pro. But they're just doing it. I think it's a very wise on-ramp to the pro class is the expedition class. But they're no slouches. I mean, they'll go 90 miles an hour, but they don't have to. So.
Awesome. So who wants to go first, Chris or Tyler?
I think Chris can go on this a little bit, but the race maybe used to be a little bit more the hare or the tortoise thing.
Yeah.
There's so many good teams now, and it's a very, very fast pace. It's almost gotten to be where it's more like a short race. We're seeing some incredible speeds, checkpoint to checkpoint. You have to have the speed you can't screw up. You got to be smart enough to know, all right, we're going to do 100 and some mile an hour. I mean, I've seen 106 on GPS. Like we're doing that on the Yukon or out on the coast on glare ice. You can get over 100. But you need to know, all right, I see this obstacle coming. It's time to slow down, or I know this is going to be bad in this section. It's a combination of the two. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would say for sure it's definitely the tortoise isn't going to win the race and the hare's not going to win the race. It's using a combination of both of them and knowing when to use them. I think that's really it's a compromise that you have to use, and you have to know how to do it wisely.
To keep it in perspective, this is a 2,000-mile plus.
Oh, I know, right?
Course. And so in 2019, which I think was one of the fastest times ever, Chris and Mike, Team 10, they did 2,000 miles in 34 hours and 27 minutes of course time. So they're doing it, in a day and a half.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and here's the thing: is a day and a half, you guys are running more miles than the average snowmobiler across the United States does in an entire season, right? Like, you start talking mountain riders, you're talking 1,000, maybe 1,500 miles for somebody who's out a lot. But a lot of mountain riders are out less than 1,000 miles a year. They're out 800 to 1,000 miles a year. You get Midwest riders that are similar to riding like you guys, where it's high speed trail runs, whatever. They're doing it in a whole season 2,000-3,000 miles, where you guys are doing it in a day and a half, 2 days, right?
Yeah.
Bars,
on average, I ride 7,000 miles a year here lately.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah, but you probably ride your sled to Starbucks up in Alaska. Isn't that what it's all about up there?
Yeah. Believe it or not, we don't have a whole lot of snow right around where I'm at here very often. It doesn't seem like. It blows away.
Yep. For us down in the lower 48, we just have these images of you guys all living in igloos up there. That's it. That's just it. Yeah. Like it's riding your snowmobile back and forth to school and to work and living in igloos. That's not the case, huh?
Well, in the villages it is, but not where I live.
All right. Sounds good. So we've got Mark Nelson asking, where do you get your GPS tracks to follow? He's got a second question here too. I'll read them both. It says, do you have to pre-run the course to create it, or is there a provided route? That's a great question, John. Why don't you take that one? I'm assuming you can answer that.
Well, there was a issue last year. Part of the strategy for the Kotzebue Loop was the people who were determined went and did a practice route, and they harvested the GPS coordinates. That was a really smart maneuver, because that place, although it can change dramatically in a week, they had the general course. Whereas some of the folks were either following their, quickly evaporating tracks, or they were just guessing, running around like Mike is on a trail. What I really want to push for is sharing the coordinates. I'm debating, and I'm probably going to put the course GPS online this year. There is a basic track that you can follow. The smartest thing to do is find out one of these A-team guys here and hack their GPS or cozy up to them to get the line. But,
well, let's talk about that, man, because I think. Well, go ahead first. Go ahead, Tyler, and I'll come back. I got a follow-up question on that, though.
It's very navigating. I think that's so. I'm a pilot too, right? So that's something you learn through. Like you have a breadcrumb trail you're following, but it's very as far as heading oriented. Like that's, as long as you're heading in the right direction, especially up there on the coast, you're gonna get there. That's what a lot of people I would have swore last year I was doing 360s at times. Yeah. But you have to trust your equipment and you keep on your right heading, you're gonna get where you need to go. Ultimately, you can get on a mapping system and build your own breadcrumb trail the whole way through it. That would get you through the race. Yeah. That really would. I would 100% say that could truly get somebody through it. Yeah. And most of the racers are going to probably give you. Last year, there was some, people wanted tracks and stuff in the routes. Certain guys went up and pre-ran stuff. You put forth a lot of money to go do that and time. But a lot of people have those tracks now. A lot of people did the race and have that. So I think it's a little bit easier coming to get some of that data. Yeah. It's available.
Yeah. Well, some of the things that I've heard from folks I'm familiar with already, like David Wagner, Scott Campbell, have said positive things about this question I'm about to ask, which is, in regards to the kind of the culture of the race and existing racers trying to bring newbies in and to kind of mentor them and coach them in, what from, I'll start with you, Jon, and then we'll go to the other two is, what's your perspective on kind of the existing people and the racers that are involved embracing bringing new people in and supporting them, right? It's a very competitive race, but at the same time, it's not like it's a short cracked snowcross race where it's done in 5 minutes, right? Like to some degree, I think the long-term health of this race needs ongoing new people joining it. It feels like it would be in everybody's best interest to help to at least some degree, right? So I'll turn it over to you, Jon, first and see what you think.
Well, yeah, you're right on the money. I mean, it is a very tight fraternity or sorority sometimes. And while these guys are absolutely chippy, fully focused on being as competitive as they can, they're going to stop. I mean, this kind of caliber of character of an Iron Dog racer is they're not going to go by somebody who's injured.
Yeah.
If they're having some issue and then they assess the situation in 2 seconds and we get a thumbs up and they're going to roll on. But these guys, they're not going to leave anybody out there,
Yeah.
And there is kind of a brotherhood or a fostering where, they will bring people in. They are going to share, okay, when you get to the old, scary tree, you got to keep going straight sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like Tyler said, I mean, some folks invested a lot of time and money to get those, race lines as opposed to general headings. So you can't expect him to compromise his investment or his advantage like that. But no, I mean, I see it happen. I see it happen in the office when people are kind of doing this, kind of banter back and forth. But when there's a question that has safety or protects the race or protects the racer, everybody's going to help everybody out. On the course, it's all eyes on the prize. But no, it's pretty remarkable how deep the relationships go for the racers. I'm impressed.
That's awesome. Tyler and Chris, anything you guys want to add to that?
Oh, I think Jon kind of talked about it. I think we've been doing. I'm getting of age on this race. I've been around for a long time, and I definitely like to help out and try and foster. I want the race to get bigger. I mean, that is my goal, is to help the race get bigger. So I definitely would help. Especially the rookies coming in. They come in and have a horrible time, they're not going to come back. So we want to make sure that they have the tools, with their clothing, help them with their clothing, help them with their machines. I ride Polaris, so I can really help them out with Polaris. I can give them some general direction on the other sleds, but most of the top guys will help, especially when it comes to reliability and making sure that the sleds will be at least, worthy to get down the trail.
Yep. Nope, that sounds good. So did you guys catch the bonfire that David Wagner had last year? Did you guys come up behind him and roast some hot dogs or anything, or how did that go?
Yeah.
I remember seeing it on the way back, and I was like, "Holy cow! What happened there? There was a big old burn hole."
Yeah.
I actually think that was I believe that was our venerable board president.
Yep.
Yeah.
Roger Brown. That was his sled. He was Dave's partner last year, just out of cow tag. We don't want to see that. That was the second sled to burn up that day, unfortunately. So
bummer deal.
Oh, it's horrible to see.
All right, so Kelly, I don't know if I'm going to say her middle name here or her second name here right, is Sherrier Regan. So Kelly, I think she's up from, you guys probably know her. I think, Jon, you're shaking your head.
She's the director of ops here at Iron
Perfect.
Dog.
Yep. She's been following me a lot lately and chiming in and stuff, so I appreciate her and her support. But she has a question here saying, how do you pick your trail leader, or who your trail leader is, or do you switch places? So like there's two people in the race and a team, right? How do you, let's go one at a time here. Tyler, why don't you go first? Is, between you and your riding partner, do you guys switch it up back and forth and take turns on who's leading and who's following? Is there a strategy that you guys use to pick who is leading? And is it one person, or does it go back and forth?
So in our case, I think every team is a little different. I lead 100% of the time.
Okay.
That's our dynamic. That's kind of my strong suit, I think, is being in the lead and picking some lines and stuff. That's not easy at times, but sometimes that's easier than being in the back too, right?
Yeah.
It has its own challenges, and that's definitely, so Nick follows, and it's amazing what they'd have to do back there. sometimes I'm the one hitting things first, which is miserable.
Yeah, that can
be. But sometimes he's riding. I can be in a clear blue, beautiful day, and it's 30 below, and I got great vision, and he's riding in a whiteout, 100 feet, 50 feet off my bumper all day long, and can't see anything. So that's how we work. I know some teams do; they swap back and forth. Just how we work our program is we have one guy lead, one guy follow, and I mean Nick does an amazing job at that. Sometimes. Yeah, it kind of blows me away.
Okay. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, so we've been more dynamic than that, especially over my career. I've led probably about half of the races that I've raced in. Mike and I currently, I started leading the first couple years. I think the first year I led probably 90% of the race, maybe more. And then every year it's progressed less, and about 4 years into us racing, it definitely flipped the other way big time. Now he leads pretty much the whole race. But we still do get into situations where, sometimes he might be confused, or like if there's like sometimes I can read sections a little bit better than him, and we'll flip for a little bit, but for the most part he'll lead. And I think it's just, you have to definitely know your teammate to kind of know what works, what doesn't. And, he's younger than me, and he's got better eyes than I do. So now it's kind of better for him to go up front. But there's definitely, like as Tyler said, there's challenges of riding in the back. It's not just, a lot of people will be like, oh, well, it's simple. Well, it's not. It's, you gotta, on the Yukon when it's 40 below, I mean, that snow dust hangs. I mean, you could be a mile behind your teammate, and there's just, snow dust just lingers in the air. It doesn't go away. So
that's those brutal cold temperatures. Being from Minnesota, I got a snapshot of it, but I know it gets as crazy or worse up there even, right? So what is the average temperatures, each season as you guys are doing this race in February?
So 40 below. I'll tell you honestly though, John, I raced the I-500 in Thief River 2012, and that was the coldest I think I have ever. It was like 30 below there and blowing 20 mile an hour, and there's humidity. I was miserable. It was awful. So you guys in the Midwest, you guys get the cold temps too. I mean, we might see.
There's a reason I live in There's a reason I live in Washington now. Just saying. So.
Ambient temps, well, like same with the GPS nowadays, like we have a little temp gauge. So last year on the start when we left Fairbanks, it actually kind of warmed up to like mid 20s, almost 30 below for the start. But then going down the Yukon, I saw at times I was going like I think I saw 40 something, 47 or something at one point on the thing. I mean, neg 47 Fahrenheit. It was cold.
Yeah, you guys don't even bother putting a negative in front of the word, just because you all just assume it's below zero, and so you just call the number, right? But I'll tell you the coldest temperature that I've personally ever experienced in Minnesota, real air temperature, not wind chill, was negative 56 below zero, and it was insane what that does to everything. Flat, your tires in your cars freeze like little flat spots in the bottom of your tires and all kinds of stuff. And then you get wind chill added to it. Now you're adding 20, 30, 40 additional degrees below zero on top of that, and it's just nuts. So,
yeah, there's been a couple years where it was, in the 50 belows. I tell in the rookie workshop, I tell all the upcoming racers that at minimum expect 25 below on the river, and you're typically going a lot faster in those sections. You're not moving around, so it's cold. You need to train for that and know what to wear and be prepared for it. And more likely it's going to be closer to 40 below. Can be on the Yukon. So
this is a question I've never heard asked before, but based on what we're talking about right now, I'm going to ask it: is what is the typical windshield you guys are putting on your sleds? Are they bigger, full protection windshields? Are they lower, kind of chest height windshields that you tuck behind? Like, what's the strategy on the windshields when it comes to maybe pro and expedition, both ways? So,
I run as tall as windshield as I can get.
I don't blame you. So, I would too.
There's another side to that though. Like we ran a taller one than I've ever ran in the race last year.
Slow you down?
Like one of the tall. Well. No, it becomes with navigating. You're constantly looking to the side, right? You get the guy in the front. That killed me. Is you're in such bad weather, you can't really. I couldn't see over it. I'm not I'm 5'9", I'm not the tallest guy, but So I'm looking to the side of it all the time, and that over long periods of time wears on you. So it's a lot of times it's not the tallest one, but a mid one, to where you're at least, you got to deflect the wind off you in those temps, because it is, like Chris kind of touched on there, those areas that we're seeing, those coldest temps, are the least physically demanding portions of the race too. A lot of them are the Yukon. They're very fast paced, and you're kind of exhilarated because things are coming quick, but you're not physically moving on the sled a whole lot. It's just, if you want to tape a sled for an hour straight, you can do it from Galena to Caltag.
Yeah.
Most years it's legitly, you can go, you could go 20 minutes and never have to let off the handlebar.
That's awesome.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So this next question, I have a preconceived notion of the answer to this, but I'd love to hear your thoughts is, do you carry Avalanche gear? So I'm just going to say out loud is, my understanding of the race is it's probably not in a lot of Avalanche terrain, but correct me or answer the question, I guess, is there a requirement, or do people carry Avalanche gear in this race?
Rarely.
No. Yeah. So, but I will say there was one year right there out of Roan, there was a slide that came down and actually went across the trail.
Yeah.
The one year that the temperatures got just right before the race and kind of laid over all the trees and an avalanche had happened. But it's a very small portion of the race where that would even come into effect.
And we have those forecasters on that too. Last year with the heavy snow, they were monitoring it, and we were giving them reports. When the pilots could fly over there, they were giving them reports. So
yeah.
So 100% of the time I ride backcountry, I have beacon probe, backpack, Avalanche back. Chris, myself, most all the other racers, we ride a lot of backcountry too, and I don't go out without that stuff. That's safety numero uno. That is, and that's along with this race. That's a lot of people. We carry a lot of stuff for safety.
Yeah, it's a big focus of the show, and that's why we get people who are asking about it and stuff. Is we talk constantly about avalanche education, safety, just backcountry safety. But the nature of this race, I could see the reason not needing to carry it, I guess.
I appreciate what you do with that, John.
Oh, you're very welcome. My pleasure. What else we got here? How important is the role of the sponsors? This is a great segue, because I think this is a great topic for us to hit next. This is, how important is the role of the sponsors to both the race and the race teams? From Daniel Thomas, that question comes. John, why don't you tackle that one? I'm assuming. Why don't you take that? Talk about the race sponsors first. Because I'm just going to call it out as part of our goal tonight is to attract enough attention to this to potentially recruit new sponsors that see value in drawing attention to this race and being part of it. There's an open invitation for anybody who wants to be part of this and sponsor the race or a race team. That's a big deal. And so let's talk a little bit about what that truly means for the race and some of the things that maybe couldn't happen if we didn't have sponsors. So.
Well, the bottom line, the race wouldn't happen without our sponsors. They've been such amazing supporters, And so one of my goals is to bring back a title sponsor. They're few and far between, but I prospect every stream bed, and one of these days I'm going to find a nugget. So if you're out there, title sponsor, we have great sponsors. Don LeGold is one of our biggest sponsors right now, and they write us a check that really keeps us funded year round, and it's important. And even beyond the cash sponsors, which we love, we have folks like Northern Air Cargo. They give us thousands and thousands of dollars of air freight, which allows us to fly fuel barrels out. Everett's on the other side of the range. They do that too. Right down to climb and the manufacturers, spiff stuff, whether it's contingency prizes or cash or in kind. We have LifeMed, which sponsors our medevac, which, Tyler's familiar with there, but yeah, sorry, man. But sponsors are the life.
Did I just sense a little burn there, Tyler? What's that about?
I don't even think I actually got in one of those yet. But.
I guess you're your teammate. But,
let's not.
But no, the sponsors are so important. Everybody who either promotes an event or competes an event understands that that's the lifeblood of for us, that's the lifeblood of February, and actually it goes all year round.
Awesome.
So there's a point, where I try and out hustle the teams, because these guys are, they're competitive on and off the field, and so I always try and woo sponsors early and often, but some folks prefer to sponsor teams, which is great. I mean, they put the money right on the ground, but we like to work together. I mean, the one thing that we do is we cherish our sponsors. We try to return on, investment as much as we possibly can. We a website that over 1 million visits during the month of February, which is, 750,000 unique page views. So we have a lot of pull, and the sponsors recognize that. And the ones who are with us, they want to align for that kind of reach. So, but teams, if we know a sponsor wants to kind of get more, in the trenches, then we do all we can to facilitate handing off the sponsors to a team. And whatever we can do, we'll give advice for folks who are up and coming on how to market yourself, or, how to best present the sponsor in the best light. So
awesome. How about Chris? What do you got to say on this topic?
Oh, I mean, obviously sponsors are huge for us as racers. I've done this race with and without sponsors essentially. And, I'm not independently wealthy, so obviously the sponsors help us kind of, up our game a little bit, I would say, to be able to, maybe get some things that we couldn't afford without them. So, I mean, they definitely, it's, without them, we really wouldn't be able to do the race, especially at the level that we're competing at now.
Okay. Tyler, anything to add?
Oh, I agree. Yeah, the sponsors they're huge to mine and Nick's program. I mean, we put a lot in, and they put a lot into us, and they stand behind us, and we try to keep it as much of a two-way street as possible of working with our sponsors to do things for them as well. I mean, I know Chris does that, and it's kind of changed these days, and you're doing more stuff, but ultimately, the race is progressing, and we're doing more and more training, and it's huge to our program. I mean, we couldn't do it without them.
Somebody call John if you want a sponsor. He'll hook you up.
So. Operator standing by.
Awesome. Like, my phone's ringing right now. Actually, no, I was kidding. All right, so Scott Campbell wants to know how many chase planes are in, like, the chase planes that you guys have are flying over the race. Give us a little strategy there, or what's going on there?
There's probably, I'd say, all top 10 to 12 teams. There's at least probably 12 planes. So I guess people that are following this right now, most of the top teams do. You get into remoteness of the course. It's hard to get parts, especially with some newer sleds too, and unique parts that we may be using. Most of us have a chase plane that's following over, similar to what you see in like the Baja and Dakar and stuff, that there's a support flying along checkpoint to checkpoint. We're unable to get support in between checkpoints, but that plane is, as much as possible, weather permitting, is trying to be with you along the route to minimize downtime. That's a big thing. I think there's that's a good segue into some of the new rules where we've opened up adding a lot more layovers to kind of help to alleviate that, to where some people felt the guys had air support directly with them, had an advantage. I think that goes into where we've opened up and allotted far more layover hours in the race, trying to get people lengthier periods of time. If they need to be off the clock or wait for parts, they can get off the clock and get those in a manner.
So
I'll go into that, Chris.
Yeah, so I think Tyler brings up a good point. I've done this race plenty of times without a plane. It's not a necessity. A couple things. You can't rely on an airplane for starters. Weather is huge, and Tyler will tell you, I mean, there's some years you don't even see your plane because they can't land where you're at, and because the weather's bad. So for one, you can't rely on a plane. Obviously, it's a great kind of insurance plan to potentially have it going. Also, even being, if you have to use the plane, it's actually a disadvantage because that means you have to work on your sled, right? So the goal is to not have to use the plane, but again, this is kind of more of a safety net if you need something.
Every year I've won, I've never touched anything on the plane. If you're going to win, you can't have a problem. So the plane did us no good on the years that we've won.
And the same with me. So that's why I say a lot of people think that the plane's an unfair advantage. I don't really agree with that. I think that if you're using the plane, you're you've almost put yourself out of contention because that means you're working on your sled. And like I said, you can't rely on a plane. Again, it's a good safety net to help you finish the race. But there's enough support out there too that I think that guys that don't have planes that, people use our parts all the time off of our planes. So.
Oh yeah. And I think that's what goes back to that camaraderie of team. Like if somebody's hard up and needs a A-arm and they're in the middle of, rowing and my plane's sitting there, our pilot's going to give them an A-arm off our airplane. If they don't have a plane, you're going to get that. We ask that it gets back on as soon as possible, get something shipped, but it's very helpful in that manner.
Nice. Okay. So I'll call this a request. Somebody named Terry Noon says, bring the race back to Fairbanks, either the start or the finish. So I'm sure that's already been under consideration both in the past and currently. And I know you had to make the decisions you made this year too. But if you have any comments on that, John, feel free to chime
Terry,
in.
Terry, how you doing? We love you. We love Fairbanks. We'll be back.
Awesome.
That was a very tough decision to leave Fairbanks. We wanted to stay up there, maybe do a 2-year cycle and start rotating around. Implement new and exciting routes, maybe add some more miles. But Terry, we'll be back. We love our Fairbanks people. You got to let it warm up a little bit, but Fairbanks is a really fun town. They're very supportive. It's we're just rotating the course around. We're trying. It's a little bit of a new era for Iron Dog, and so we're trying to spread the love around a little bit, but we'll either start or finish in Fairbanks.
Yeah, rumor has it it's going to start in Fairbanks and end in Seattle. That's what I heard for next year.
I think I'm going to tap out.
That way I can watch, and you can't go into Canada, so you have to water skip the waterfront. So, all right. So Daniel Thomas says, "How do the racers communicate while racing?" So I'm going to turn that over to Chris. Maybe let's have you take that one first.
Yeah, so the last couple of years, we started using communication devices, radios, to talk between my teammate and I. It's kind of a game changer to be able to talk and say if you have a problem or again, the person in the front can say, hey, there's a hazard or so it's definitely nice.
Are you using push to talk or are you using just voice activated?
We're using push to talk. Yeah, we're using a push to talk system, and it works really well. We use rugged radios. They work really good. They're in helmet speakers and mics, and yeah, they work good. Of course, prior to that, it's a lot of reading your teammate and kind of hand signals, and you got to know if your partner is pointing at something, that you got to figure out if that means to go there or to not go there, right? So
that stands for all snowmobiling. That's not just racing. That's all snowmobiling. It's like, what do you mean? Oh, there's that big hole. I thought you told me to go that way, right? Like I've seen that one happen before.
Oh yeah.
And then
I've
Tyler.
heard that argument.
Yeah, Tyler. Anything to add?
Deal.
Yep.
Yeah, same deal. We're all pretty much, I'd say 90% of us out there running rugged radio systems, and that's been the evolution of the race. I would have never thought of using them, and for a while people were like, oh, do you chat with each other? No, we don't. It's very minimal. It's the only time you're ever speaking on it is when there's a problem. Or,
it's like I don't even. You're like Tyler's like, I don't even like my race partner. That's why I'm running so fast to get away from him, right? Why would I talk to him, right? Yeah. Awesome. So we actually. Oh, go ahead. Anything else you want to add?
No, go ahead.
All right, so shifting gears here, we got Melissa Wagner, who's Dave Wagner's wife, says, thank you, John, and the Iron Dog board and the racers for all you do. Everybody in the lower 48, come and see us at the Salt Lake and Boise snow shows. We will be at the Iron Dog booth. So quick shout out is there will be Iron Dog booths at both of those shows, it sounds like. And it's a perfect time for me to announce, I just found out that I am going to be attending the Salt Lake Snow Show, and I will very likely be hanging around in the Iron Dog booth myself. So if anybody's at any of those shows, come on by and say hi. For those who follow me regularly know that I just started a new job. I'm like 4 days into my new job, and somehow I snuck in the question of, hey, can I have the Friday off at the end of the month? And the answer was yes. So thank goodness for that. It worked out. But yeah, so I'm going to go down and hang out with the Wagners and be at the Salt Lake show. And the Boise show is still a 50-50. I'm not sure if I'll make that one or not, but there's a good chance I'll end up there at least one day. So
That sounds like a live remote opportunity for you right there.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right.
All right. And then the next
Thanks,
one
Lance
here.
and Dave, by the way. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
Thank you.
You're going to be there. Yeah.
Yep, no worries.
Thank you.
All right. So we're quite a ways into the show. We're an hour and 15 minutes in, and so John, Chris, and Tyler, why don't you guys think of any final comments or thoughts that you have that that maybe you haven't shared yet? We'll do a quick round robin here in just a minute while I scan these last questions to see if anything else pops up. Here's a good.
I'd say just anybody out there, feel free to reach out to any one of us. Especially myself or Chris. Team 7 Iron Dog Team 7, Facebook and Instagram. Throw out some questions. If you have anything beyond this that you want to ask us personally, feel free to do so. And we're very, I think, especially Chris and Mike, and then Nick and I definitely are out to help support any new and upcoming teams and do what we can to help get you out there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I got a quick question here before you go to the next one, Chris, is, what do you guys do with your old race sleds? Like, are you selling them off to people locally somewhere, or are you parting them out for the next season, or what do you do with them?
Oh, yeah. It seems like we get a lot of repeat customers that, will buy our sleds. Some of them that want to train for the race, they're able to, kind of pick our machines apart, see what we did to them, and, they're solid sleds usually. I mean, they've only, the pole starter's only been started 20 times on it. So the pole rope's only brand new.
It's only got 34 hours of ride time.
Yeah, I know, right?
Rode for 6 days.
Yeah.
Rode to church
used for a week.
Yeah, rode to church back and forth, right?
Yeah.
For 1 week.
Awesome. So I think that's all the rest of the questions. So Chris, why don't you give us your final comments, and I'll have John wrap it up.
Yeah, I say the same thing that Tyler said. Iron Dog Team 10, Olds Morgan is our team page. I help with the rookie workshop every year for the new racers coming in. Definitely an open invitation for anybody that has any questions that either wants to get into the race or in the race and have questions. We'll have a rookie workshop that will go over pretty much everything: the navigation, the clothing, the machine, the gear that you're going to need, and kind of mentally and physically how to prepare for the race. So
perfect. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
All right, John. There's a lot of pressure here, buddy. Like, we just had an amazing show that's gone with incredible questions and engagement, and hour and 16 minutes in, and you're like the grand finale at the 4th of July fireworks. And so the pressure is on, and it's all you, buddy.
I show up with sparklers, just my luck. No, Chris kind of touched on it. Our next, we're going to start rolling into Iron Dog events, and our next one that folks can participate in, either online questions or show up in person, is our goal. Spinar Builder Supply is going to host it. Subway is one of our sponsors. Coca-Cola Odom Products is one of our sponsors. But the South High Media team, they do a live stream, and we do have interactive questions going back and forth. And we have, former champions, hopefully champions will be there, and other folks to offer just amazing advice. I mean, the depth of advice between these, this is almost 30 years. 40 years of experience right here in front of us. You just don't get that in many other sports. So they'll give you the straight skinny on what it takes to be an Iron Dogger and how to stay alive and well and safe on the trail for both you and your machine. But yeah, so that's December 5th, and we'll be posting the live links for the live stream from the South High students as soon as we kind of get that link set up with the South guys. But yeah, if you want to run this race, go to irondog.org. There's an online entry. You can pay online. If you want to become a sponsor, there's an on-ramp there for sending in a form, and I'll track you down and we'll pitch the moo your way. But then during race week, from February 11th, February 20th, tune into irondog.org and watch the tracking, and you'll get a real taste of what goes on out there.
Yep, sounds good. So, John, why don't you, as we get close to the race there, make sure that you push me the link to where people can track the race, and I'll help push it out here the day or so before the race so people have access to that.
That would be fantastic.
Yep, happy to help with that. And then I've got actually a question that's leading to maybe a answer or a recommendation, if you don't already have this set up, is a guy named Jeff Stoll here says, just need a teammate, meaning I think you guys have inspired him to want to be part of the race, but have you guys considered ever having kind of like on the website an opportunity for people to submit that they're interested in racing but looking for a teammate? Is that something you guys have ever tried to do to coordinate, guys like this? Yeah, kind of like Match.com for crazy people who want to go 100 miles an hour across the ice.
Yeah. We try and facilitate connections like that. I mean, I know we put a team together last year, one guy from Australia and one guy from Australia, and they did the course. We try and facilitate. I know Jeff, I know he's been hunting for a guy. This is one of his dreams. So I think he's been looking for 2 years, and we're there for you, man. I'm still looking.
Where does Jeff live? Jeff, where do you live? Drop it in the comments quick. If you're quick, I'll call it out. But anybody who's watching tonight, I'm sure has the same feeling as Jeff does of being inspired to want to race. And if you're interested, hit Jeff up in the comments or reach out to Jon. I'm sure we'll have all three of you guys tagged in the post here. Once I get done, we'll kind of go back and I usually edit it out and tag everybody in it, and encourage the three of you to go into the comments too, and just appreciate the people who are watching tonight, whether you do it tonight or tomorrow. But the fans love it when you guys interact with them after the show on Facebook. But
we love those fans.
Yeah, guys, like hour and 20-minute long show, and I don't know the last time I've had this much fun for an hour 20 minutes straight. Like this has been a fun event for me. I'm grateful that guys like Jon, like you, reach out and look at this show as an opportunity to get the word out to the community. Like to me, that tells me I've built something really special here, and that I am the conduit. Like this show, I tell everybody over and over again, is like this show is not about me. We didn't talk anything about my racing. This show is all about the community and guys like Jon, Avalanche victims that have told their stories. It really is a tool for the community to use. And Jon, when you called me and said, hey, can we do this? I don't want to trouble you. What was my answer? Tell everybody what I told you.
I think it was, heck yeah. This is PG, right? Heck yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like let's do it. Like let's, it's my pleasure. Let's get the word out, get the story out, and if you guys can't tell, like I love this sport as much as anybody, and just love being able to help out with things like this and make a difference. So
it takes all of us, Jon. We appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, I wrap up every show with these final words, which is God bless everybody. Thank you for being here, and don't forget to live large. Right? Got that on the bottom of the shirt. Live large. Right. Have a great night, everybody.
All right.